Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. While most of Israel's fronts look as if they have been relegated to the inactive list, policymakers and military commanders know that this could be an illusion, tempting the nation and its military at their own peril. Israel had better use this downtime to prepare its forces to once again confront Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and the Houthis. Does it, and if so, how? And what lessons did it draw from the 26 months since October 7th of 2023? Joining us to discuss include Brigadier General in Reserve, Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of Intelligence at Mossad, as well as a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate. It's good to see you, General.
Good to be here.
Good to have you. Also joining us is Brigadier General in Reserve, Yossi Kuperwasser, formerly the Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs, the head of the IDF Intelligence Directorate Research and Assessment Division, and currently the President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, among others. It's good to see you, General.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's good to have you both. And with us, our TV7 Editor-at-Large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, the Latin phrase goes, Visi pacem parabellum. When you want to prevent a war, prepare for one, and yet Israel is confronted with multiple fronts. None of them are truly pacified. Some are in a state of disarray, and yet all of them are looking to rehabilitate themselves and to prepare for a future confrontation with the aim of eradicating the state of Israel. Now, some are more realistic than others in their approach, but nonetheless, Israel is not standing idly by.
Parabellum is also a very famous brand for a revolver, a handgun, and there is a famous saying by someone who prepared for war, I am now giving the floor to Comrade Parabellum. So, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, who went into the retired list some 3 years ago and was recalled into active duty as the Chief of the General Staff less than a year ago, has just published his key lessons learned from the war in order to prepare for a resumption. And top of the list is prepare for a surprise attack. Now, that means that rather than act in a preemptive way, Israel should brace itself for its enemies to start a war or a campaign or a major terrorist act which could escalate into a war from any of these fronts. And by preparing for it, it means that you must have enough forces on hand in order to absorb the first attack and then go on counterattack. So it means, it looks as if it's only a domestic Israeli issue, but it's not. It means that you must have enough of a standing army, because another lesson is to prepare your maneuver forces, not only your air force or artillery, in order to have enough firepower to take part in an exchange of fire, but also infantry, armor, engineers, artillery, and it's a lot of work for the IDF.
Absolutely. Well, the strong power is merely one part of dealing with the challenges at hand. There are multiple tools to include the diplomatic aspect, the economic aspect, and other things that need to be addressed in order to confront the challenges that Israel faces to date. But General Sofrin, when we're talking about the surprise of October 7th, the week before that, the chief of the IDF Intelligence Directorate, Khalifa, came out and spoke about the 50-year anniversary of the previous surprise, namely the Yom Kippur War of 1973, and we heard the whole narrative of 50 years ago, we weren't prepared. Now we are prepared. And then a week later, October 7th happens. This is something that really caught many Israelis off guard. And not only Israelis, also other Western countries that asked themselves, okay, we might be in a situation of being proudful or prideful in the context. And, once the pride comes, the fall is not far to linger. Where are we now? And did the shift of doctrine to confront challenges head on before they even arise really manifest and trickle down into the perception and being of every Israeli officer and leader?
When you compare the surprise of 1973 and October 2023, you find, at least in two dimensions, you find full similarity. The first one is conception. On 1973, Eli Zahira, as a director of military intelligence, claimed that the Egyptians will not go to war until they have enough fighters to strike at the rear of Israel, something that never happened, and it was not a provision for President Sadat. He went for a limited war in order to ignite what we call a political process, and it worked well for him. On 2023, the conception was that Hamas is deterred. Hamas wants prosperity, wants to have economical prosperity for the people of Gaza, and it doesn't want to engage Israel. Now, two lessons that should be learned from that, first of all, is to be prepared all day, 360 days a year, a week on a daily basis, for a surprise attack without any notice. That means don't rely only on the intelligence to give you the early warning. Be prepared by yourself. And you have enough tools at the tactical level to gather information and to see the changes on the other side of the hill. By the way, it happened on 2023, on October, when a lot of indications came out from the lady observers, but was not treated as well. The second lesson is that don't allow your enemy to rebuild its capacity and sit and wait for the time to come, but keep on mowing the grass on a daily basis, just like we do right now in Lebanon. I believe that this will be the model in Gaza as well for the coming years. That means that we are going to have an ongoing fighting for a lot of coming years, and I don't want to define the term, but I think that this is the ratio that should lead us for the coming years as well.
General Kuperwasser?
Well, first of all, we have to realize that you cannot be in full alert all day long, forever. We don't have the resources and we don't have the manpower in order to keep ourselves prepared for 7th of October tomorrow morning, every day. So we need still to rely on intelligence. But what needs to be done is to make sure that we deal with the capabilities of the enemy, not in retaliation to an attack, but in time to prevent them from having them. And the problem is that we are caught in a regime of ceasefires. Now, we have a ceasefire in Gaza. We cannot, while we are in the context of this ceasefire, start a war and attack all kinds of activities of Hamas. We do that from time to time when Hamas launches a terror attack in Rafah or in Khan Yunis or wherever. We take advantage of that and use it in order to bomb a target that we were locating ahead of time. But we didn't do anything about this target because there was no context to do that. This was exactly the situation before October 6th, or until October 6th. This was the situation. There was a ceasefire between us and Hamas. Hamas took advantage of that in order to build its power, and we did nothing. This was something very strange, but this was the case. And we are, by allowing the international community to steer in our pot, allowing this kind of situation to emerge again. And this is what we are dealing with in this international stabilization force and the kind of ceasefire we're going to have with Gaza. Fortunately, we do keep the perimeter and we are going to keep control of the Philadelphia corridor.
But are we going to be able to really block Hamas from rearming themselves? Look at what happens along the border with Egypt, between Israel and Egypt. They find all kinds of innovative ways in order to arm themselves. Like, I remember very well the Karine, yes? When they found, together with the Iranians, a way to smuggle the weapons underneath the water. And it was supposed to reach the Gaza shores without us noticing it. Fortunately, we were able to thwart it on its way. But we could have failed. We could have easily failed. There was no guarantee that we would succeed.
And likely this wasn't the only ship.
And I don't know that there were more, but of that type at that time. Later on, there was a close sea, and these are the ones we know of. What about those we don't know? And I think that we shouldn't underestimate. One of the problems we had was underestimating the enemy. We shouldn't underestimate Hamas. They sit and break their heads, trying to find ways to arm themselves, in spite of the fact that Israel puts all kinds of obstacles. And I think that eventually they might find some ways. So we should adopt a different approach, an approach that says whenever we locate whenever we identify any effort of our enemies to arm themselves, we should take action. This is the rule that we apply in Lebanon. In Lebanon, we don't wait for anything. There is a ceasefire, but the ceasefire allows us to take action against the attempts of Hezbollah to rearm and to redeploy in the south, this is the kind of ceasefires we should have. This is not the kind of ceasefire we have in Gaza. And we should be worried about it, because definitely what the Qataris and the Turks and to some extent the Egyptians want is a ceasefire that would allow Hamas to regroup. That's something that's very challenging. Now, since we cannot have all the forces deployed to face a 7th of October attack, we have to apply this kind of policy on all fronts, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, of course. We don't do it in Yemen. I'm sure the Yemenites are rearming themselves to the teeth now with the support of the Iranians. Do we do anything? Are we going to do anything? We're not going to do anything.
Maybe one should...
Before you do, I think it's important to touch on two things. One, Central Command is proactive when it comes to the Houthis, and they have been also implementing some procedures to thwart the dual-use components and other type of components utilized by the Houthis via humanitarian vessels of humanitarian aid to go into Yemen, which was the route that they utilized for quite some time. Now every container is being scrutinized, and that is something that did not exist before. So there are activities that the United States are taking in order to assist in this process. With regard to what you just mentioned, with regard to the Egyptians, Qataris, and Turks, I think it's important to touch on this for a moment. And General Sofrin, when we're looking at the Turks and the Qataris, who are very keen on seeing Hamas not only survive for various political reasons, but not only, they do share a common denominator, and that is the Ikhwan, the Muslim Brotherhood. And as such, of course, the Egyptians have their own reasons for wanting Hamas to survive. But explain to us what is the complexity here, and why doesn't the United States put a stop to it the way they can, because they do have the leverage to bring about such a stop and revitalize a certain process that would genuinely bring about a change in the Gaza Strip?
We spoke earlier about the strategy of the United States or the American administration. They declared that the war in Gaza is over, has ended. Now, the facts doesn't really interrupt them to see the big picture. That means that we look at the reality on a daily basis because we live there, and we engage the Palestinians on a daily basis, especially Hamas, and of course the residents in Gaza. And I look from above, from Washington, D.C., and I see blue sky and blue sea, and they don't see what is below. Now, the fact that they declared the war has ended put a restriction on us, mainly. And that means that they say, okay, we're going to have phase B, where Hamas is going to be disarmed, but this is something that everybody interprets differently. That means Hamas says, okay, I'm willing to give away only my heavy weapon systems, meaning missiles, rockets, but not the light weapon systems. The Qataris and the Turks are looking at it the same way. They don't want Hamas to be disarmed and weak. They want it strong. Each one of them because of different angles. But this is the fact. Therefore, there are a lot of disagreements between us and between these two countries. Israel objects that Turkey will take part in what happens in Gaza. Just in this Doha conference that I mentioned before, a confidant said that Israel objects Turkey to be part of the arrangement in Gaza, but it won't happen because we are going to be there. And we are going to stabilize Gaza, we are going to assist the people, we are going to rebuild Gaza, and only then we are going to engage Hamas and to try to disarm it.
A confidant, the foreign minister of Turkey, and just to put things into context, however, Turkey is already in Gaza. Its non-governmental organizations are vigorous.
But I mean formally.
Right.
As part of the ISF, they're going to be part of it. They want to be part of it, and the Americans won't block them because they're partners, because they see them as part of stabilizing Syria, and because they're part of NATO.
What would that signal, however, to the Saudis, to the Emiratis?
It doesn't really matter because each one of them has its own engagement with Americans. That means they're going to invest a lot of money in the U.S. and to get a lot of weapon systems and to assist them to build some other facilities in Saudi Arabia. And therefore, they will stay quiet aside and they won't object Turkey to be part of that.
It is true that the ceasefire in Gaza is not similar to the ceasefire in Lebanon, and the one in Lebanon is indeed very efficient to frustrate Hezbollah from entrenching itself further, even though Hezbollah, with the help of the Iranians, and not only the Iranians, are doing everything in their power to rehabilitate themselves. In Gaza, we do have the yellow zone, where the IDF has the freedom to operate, versus the areas where Hamas is currently controlling and has managed to rehabilitate itself quite nicely, to say it mildly. But Mr. Oren, when we're talking about the point that General Kuperwasser has made earlier, he spoke about the fact that we can be ready 365 days a year to confront every challenge and every threat similar to October 7th, and therefore intelligence is important. But nonetheless, post the Yom Kippur War of 1973, the IDF deployed and created a rapid response division that was at standby for those type of scenarios. It was subsequently dismantled, but it did exist for a long period of time in order to confront those possible scenarios. Of course, budgeting ultimately rendered it obsolete, but nonetheless, that was one of those scenarios. Is that not a viable option today?
Well, that formation which you are referring to was intended to work in the Western Iraq arena or further. It wasn't really a lesson learned in 1973. But to the layman, striking first sounds very simple. However, there are two different versions which we talked about: preventive and preemptive. Preventive is what we all talked about, not letting the other side build up its force so that when it is ready, when it believes that it can strike us, it will. No, we will do it on our good time. Preemptive is when we know that its missiles are on the launchers, and if we don't act now, we will be hit. And we are not going to take the chance of letting him build up and then only when it's on the launch, if we know that this is the case. So one way to fight it is to have a cordon sanitaire, a demilitarized zone between us and the other side. The perimeter, now we are on the yellow line in Gaza. But in Lebanon, there are two distinct fronts. There is southern Lebanon, south of the Litani River, where if they have troops like the Radwan force, the version of the Nukhba, which Hamas has, then they can raid.
But a better one. But a better one.
Yes, they can raid Israeli villages and towns, and this we will not allow. But further north or east, they have their missiles and rockets. 3/4 of their arsenal has been destroyed, but that 1/4 remaining is still a lot of firepower. So when we say that we are not going to let them build up their force, we only mean the one adjacent to our border. They still have their missiles and rockets, and when the Iranians tell them, or when they see their interest in doing it, they could start something unless we preempt.
And yet, taking, or rather putting aside the Gaza portfolio and the Lebanon portfolio, let's move for a moment to Syria. Right now we're seeing the Damascus regime of Ahmed al-Shara building on the basis of the 3 division that was always established next to the border of Syria and Israel, rather the 1974 or 1974 and Mistress Line. The effort by the current regime to build 3 divisions with the intention to have 25,000 troops in those divisions as a basis, with more in the long term, is something that they're proactively working on. Now, Israel has said this area is going to be demilitarized, but at the same time, we're seeing thousands being recruited for the purpose of filling those divisions, which poses a direct threat to the state of Israel. One of those divisions is exclusively former Al-Qaeda and Islamic State individuals.
Well, yes, and that's why we keep operating in Syria and trying to do 2 things at the same time. One, to hit those bases where they deploy in the southern part of Syria, including through ground operations. It's that sometimes are costly. And secondly, moving towards some sort of an understanding or written agreement with the Syrians. That would mean that they are not going to do that they will take upon themselves a commitment not to do that. And we do that through the good auspices of the Americans, and I hope this is going to work. And if not, we shall have to take action in order to make it work the way we want. And I must say that every arena has its own special characteristics. Look at Iran, for example. There's a ceasefire. The ceasefire is used by the Iranians to rebuild their missile capabilities. They don't do much about their nuclear capabilities because the damage was too heavy, maybe. But the missiles, they're making a big effort to show off their capabilities, and they carry out all kinds of exercises and so on and so forth.
And the Chinese are helping.
And Chinese are helping, and we do nothing. Yeah. And we wait for we say, if they are going to move again on the nuclear realm and get close to enriching uranium to turning it into fissile material, then we shall do something. It's a mistake to wait for that to happen. We were lucky that June operation took place in the context of the wider war, because if the same thing would have happened without the wider war, I'm not sure that we would have taken action. It's this state of mind of ceasefire is a very problematic one, because it's being used by our enemies in order to build their force. And Israel is in a ceasefire. They are not supposed to fire.
We're drawing near to the end of the program. We have 2 minutes in total, so please keep it short. Looking forward, what does Israel need to do in order to ensure that an October 7th or a Yom Kippur war does not happen once again in the short, medium, or in the next 50 years as happened last? General Kuperwasser, we'll start with you.
I think the most important thing is to disarm Hamas. That's the most important thing. This is going to be the message sent to everybody that this is the price paid by those who carry out something like 7th of October. So you'd rather not do it. And at the same time, adopt this policy of prevention and preemption at the same time. But first of all, prevention.
General Sofrin?
First of all, we have to rearrange or reorganize our intelligence capabilities, meaning to be focused more on giving early warnings and not just looking for targets all over the Middle East, and to give the right assessment on time. Second, we have to be prepared for what we call a surprise attack. That means we have to keep reserve units ready to be deployed very quickly and very efficiently to assist. And of course, as General Kuperwasser said, to keep on mowing the grass wherever we can and whenever we can.
Mr. Oren?
Take a diplomatic initiative. Don't wait for the other side. And also, don't confuse yourself when the other side doesn't do anything. Don't tell yourself that the other side is deterred. It means that it is waiting for the right time and the right opportunity for it to strike.
Translate the tactical achievements in a strategic victory is something that needs to happen. And the leadership in Jerusalem, with the help of everyone, need to bring about such a decisive victory that will echo for many years to come. But the situation remains fluid, and time will tell how things will evolve in the short to medium term. With that, I'd like to thank General Kuperwasser, General Sofrin, and Mr. Oren for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.
I'm Iran, former Deputy National Security Advisor here in Israel, a diplomat, a strategist by training. I'm very happy to be at TV7 and offer my interpretation along my esteemed colleagues. The strong point of TV7 is to be a reliable source of authoritative insight in an era of shallow news environment that is very difficult for viewers to trust.